Eleanor Prescott pressed the rifle barrel against the stranger's chest. Her hands didn't shake, not anymore. 5 years of grief had burned the trembling right out of her. "You got 3 seconds to tell me why you're on my land," she said. The man looked at her with eyes that had seen too much death. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "I'm looking for the man who killed your husband." The rifle wavered, just barely, but he saw it. Before we begin this story, hit that subscribe button. We're sharing powerful stories every single day, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from. I want to see just how far this story travels. Now let's begin. The summer of 1887 came to West Texas like a punishment. Eleanor Prescott stood on her porch at Copper Ridge Ranch watching the heat rise off the cracked earth in waves. 5 years ago, she would have cursed this drought. 5 years ago, she would have paced and worried and prayed for rain. Now she just watched. Watching was easier than hoping. Her foreman, a weathered Mexican man named Diego, rode up slow dust trailing behind him like a ghost. "Señora," he said, tipping his hat, "the well's running low. We got maybe 2 weeks before the horses start suffering." Ellie nodded. "I'll ride into town tomorrow, see about getting water hauled in." Diego hesitated. She knew that hesitation. It meant bad news. "Spit it out," she said. "Thornton's men were at the north fence again. They didn't cut it this time. Just stood there, watching." Her jaw tightened. "Let them watch." "Señora, I know what you think, Diego." Her voice was flat hard. "You think I should sell. Everyone thinks I should sell. But my husband built this ranch with his bare hands, and I'll burn it to the ground before I let Jasper Thornton put his name on it." Diego said nothing. He'd worked for the Prescotts for 20 years. He knew when to speak and when to let silence do the talking. "Get the men ready," Ellie said. "If Thornton's boys come back, I want them to see we're not sleeping." She turned and walked inside, letting the screen door bang shut behind her. The house was quiet. It was always quiet now. Ellie moved through the kitchen, her boots echoing on the wooden floor. She stopped at the mantel where a single photograph sat in a tarnished silver frame. Henry Prescott, age 42 the year before he died. Strong jaw, kind eyes, the hint of a smile playing at his lips. She touched the glass. Just once. Just barely. "I'm still here," she whispered. "Still fighting." The photograph didn't answer. It never did. She pulled open the drawer beneath the mantel and took out the letter, the one she'd read so many times the paper had gone soft as cloth. Henry's handwriting dated 3 days before the cattle drive that killed him. "Ellie, if you're reading this, something went wrong. Don't blame yourself. Whatever happened, it wasn't your fault. You always did carry more guilt than any one woman should. I need you to promise me something. Don't let this ranch become your grave. It's just land, Ellie. Just dirt and fence posts. You're worth more than that. Find something to live for. Or someone. I love you. I always will. Henry." She folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the drawer. Her eyes were dry. She'd cried all her tears years ago. A knock at the door. Ellie's hand moved to the rifle mounted above the fireplace. She lifted it down smooth and quiet, checked the chamber. Loaded. Always loaded. She crossed to the door and opened it. The man on her porch was tall, lean, sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore a long duster despite the heat, and a Colt revolver hung low on his hip. His horse, a big black stallion, stood behind him, ears pricked forward. "Mrs. Prescott," he asked. "Who's asking?" "Name's Caleb Ashford." He reached into his coat pocket, slow, deliberate, keeping his hands visible. He pulled out a folded piece of paper and held it up. "I'm a bounty hunter, looking for a man named Marcus Dillard." Ellie didn't lower the rifle. "Don't know him." "Didn't say you did, ma'am." His voice was calm. patient, like he'd had rifles pointed at him before and lived to tell about it. But I got reason to believe he's been in this area, maybe still is. What's he wanted for? Caleb's jaw tightened. Just a flicker, but she caught it. Murder, among other things. Murder of who? A pause, long enough to fill with ghosts. My sister, he said quietly. 3 years ago. Shot her in her own home while her children slept in the next room. Ellie felt something shift in her chest. The rifle lowered an inch. Just an inch. I'm sorry for your loss, Mr. Ashford, but I can't help you. Ma'am, I don't need your help. Just need to know if you've seen anything strange lately. Strangers passing through. Men who don't belong. She almost laughed. Almost. Mister, the only strangers I see are the ones trying to take my land. Now if you'll excuse me. Jasper Thornton. She froze. What did you say? Caleb's eyes locked onto hers. Jasper Thornton. The banker. He's been buying up property all along this valley. Folks who don't want to sell have a way of running into trouble. Her grip tightened on the rifle. You know something about Thornton. I know he's connected to the railroad company pushing west. I know he's got men on his payroll who don't work at the bank. He paused. And I know Marcus Dillard was seen in Thornton's office 2 weeks before your husband died. The world tilted. Ellie grabbed the doorframe to steady herself. Her heart was pounding now loud enough to hear in her ears. What are you saying? I'm saying your husband's death might not have been an accident, Mrs. Prescott. I'm saying the man who killed my sister might be the same man who took your husband from you. She didn't invite him in, didn't offer him water or a place to sit, but she didn't send him away either. They stood on the porch, the sun beating down merciless, and Caleb Ashford told her what he knew. Dillard's not just a killer, he said. He's a cleaner. Works for men with money and dirty hands. When someone needs to disappear, when someone's standing in the way of a business deal, they call Dillard. And you think Thornton hired him to kill Henry? I think it's possible. Your ranch sits right in the path of the proposed rail line. Henry wouldn't sell. A few weeks later, he's dead. Caleb's voice was flat, but his eyes burned. Coincidences like that don't happen in my experience. Ellie's mind was racing. She thought about that night, the night Henry rode out with the cattle drive. They'd argued. Stupid, petty things. Money. The fence that needed fixing. She'd said words she couldn't take back, and he'd ridden away without looking at her. 3 days later, they brought his body home. They said it was bandits. A robbery gone wrong. The cattle scattered, Henry shot in the back. No witnesses. No one to bring to justice. She'd accepted it. What choice did she have? But now, if what you're saying is true, she said slowly, then Thornton's been trying to run me off ever since. The broken fences, the poisoned water hole, the men watching from the ridge. Makes sense. He couldn't take the land from Henry, so he killed him. Now he's trying to break you, make you sell cheap. And Dillard? Gone to ground. But he'll surface. Men like him always do. Caleb's hand moved to the butt of his revolver, unconscious automatic. When he does, I'll be waiting. Ellie studied him. The hard line of his jaw, the tension in his shoulders. This wasn't just a job for him. This was personal. You're not just hunting him for the bounty, she said. You're hunting him because you want to put a bullet in him yourself. He didn't deny it. Does that change things? She thought about Henry, about 5 years of grief and guilt and sleepless nights, about the questions she'd never asked because she was too afraid of the answers. No, she said. It doesn't. That evening, Ellie rode into Salida. The town baked under the summer sun boardwalks, warped paint-peeling dogs panting in whatever shade they could find. She tied her horse outside the general store and walked the dusty main street toward the bank. Jasper Thornton's bank. She pushed through the heavy wooden doors. Cool air hit her face, cooler than outside anyway. The bank smelled of paper and ink and something else. Something that reminded her of snakes. Thornton sat behind his desk in the back office, visible through the glass partition. He looked up when she entered, and a smile spread across his face. The kind of smile a wolf gives a lamb. "Eleanor Prescott," he said, rising. "What an unexpected pleasure. Please come in." She crossed the floor, ignoring the clerks who stopped their work to watch. She didn't sit when he gestured to the chair. "I want you to stop," she said. "Stop what, my dear?" "The games, the intimidation, the men watching my ranch." Thornton's smile didn't waver. "I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about. I'm a banker, Eleanor. I shuffle papers and count money. I don't employ watchers. Don't lie to me. I never lie." He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "I make offers, fair offers, and when people are wise enough to accept them, everyone benefits. When they're not," he shrugged. "Well, the West is a dangerous place. Things happen. Accidents, tragedies." Her blood ran cold. "Like what happened to Henry." Something flickered in his eyes. Just for a moment, then it was gone. "Your husband's death was a terrible loss. A robbery, as I recall. Senseless violence. But these things happen on the frontier. Surely you understand that." "I understand more than you think." She turned and walked out of the bank, her heart hammering against her ribs. Behind her, she heard Thornton's voice, smooth and cold. "Think about my offer, Eleanor. I'd hate to see you make any unwise decisions." She rode back to the ranch as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of blood and fire. Caleb Ashford was still there. He'd made camp near the barn, his horse unsaddled and grazing in the corral with her own. When she rode up, he rose from where he sat cleaning his rifle. "You went to see him," he said. Not a question. "I needed to look him in the eye. And—" She dismounted, handed the reins to Diego, who'd appeared silent as always. He practically confessed. Not in words, but the way he talked about Henry's death. She shook her head. "He knows something. Maybe everything." Caleb nodded slowly. "Then we're on the same trail." I told you, Mrs. Prescott. Dillard and Thornton are connected. If I'm going to find the man who killed my sister, I need to understand who's giving him orders. That means understanding Thornton. And right now you know more about Thornton than anyone." She should have said no. Should have told him to take his hunt somewhere else, to leave her alone with her grief and her failing ranch and her stubborn pride. But she thought about Henry, about the letter, about 5 years of accepting a lie. "You can stay," she said. "For now. But this is my land, Mr. Ashford. My fight. You're here because our enemies happen to be the same. Nothing more." "Understood." She started toward the house, then stopped, turned back. "One more thing. Ma'am, if we find Dillard when we find him, I want to be there. I want to look him in the eye before you do whatever it is you're planning to do." Caleb held her gaze. "That can be arranged." "Good." She walked inside and closed the door. Through the window, she watched him return to his camp, his movements economical, practice the movements of a man who'd spent years living on the edge of violence. She didn't trust him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But trust didn't matter. What mattered was the truth, and after 5 years of silence, Eleanor Prescott was finally ready to hear it. Night fell hard and hot over Copper Ridge Ranch. Ellie lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the summer darkness. Crickets, coyotes in the distance, the occasional stamp of horses in the corral, and something else. She sat up slowly, reaching for the pistol she kept under her pillow. Outside, a horse whinnied, not hers, not Caleb's black stallion, a stranger's horse. She moved to the window, peered through the curtain. Moonlight painted the yard in silver and shadow. She saw movement near the barn. A figure. Then another. "Diego!" she hissed. No answer. Where was he? She pulled on her boots, grabbed her rifle, and slipped out the back door. The night air was thick, heavy with the smell of dust and dry grass. She kept low, moving along the side of the house toward the barn. Voices, low, urgent. Men's voices. Boss said to make it look like an accident. Too many people around now. That bounty hunter. Doesn't matter. She's got until the end of the month. If she won't sell by then. Ellie's finger tightened on the trigger. Then a hand closed over her mouth. She tried to scream, tried to fight, but the grip was iron. A voice breathed in her ear, calm, familiar. Easy. It's me. Caleb. He released her, slowly pressed a finger to his lips. In the darkness, his eyes gleamed. How many? She whispered. 3. Maybe 4. He drew his revolver, checked the cylinder. You go left, I'll go right. Don't shoot unless you have to. This is my ranch, Mr. Ashford. I'll shoot whenever I damn well please. Something almost like a smile crossed his face. Yes, ma'am. They moved together, two shadows in the darkness, toward the men who'd come to destroy everything she had left. They moved like smoke through the darkness. Ellie kept her rifle low, her breath steady. 30 years on this land had taught her every shadow, every creak of wood, every hiding spot. These men didn't know the terrain. She did. She heard Caleb's footsteps fade to the right, silent as a hunting cat. Then nothing. The voices near the barn grew louder. Just torch it and go. Boss wants this done tonight. What about the woman? What about her? By the time she wakes up, the whole place'll be burning. Ellie's blood turned to ice. They weren't here to scare her. They were here to kill her. She rounded the corner of the barn and raised her rifle. 3 men stood in the moonlight, one holding a lantern, another clutching a can of kerosene. The third had a pistol drawn, watching the house. Drop it, Ellie said. They spun. The one with the pistol fired wild, the shot cracking through the night air. Ellie squeezed her trigger. The man screamed, clutching his shoulder, his weapon flying into the dirt. The one with the kerosene threw the can at her and ran. Ellie ducked the can, sailing past her head, and when she looked up, Caleb was there. He came out of the shadows like vengeance itself, catching the runner with a tackle that sent them both crashing into the fence. 1 punch. 2. The man went limp. The third man, the one with the lantern, bolted toward the horses. He's running, Ellie shouted. Caleb was already moving. He drew his revolver and fired once. The lantern exploded in the man's hand glass and fire scattering across the ground. The man screamed, beating at the flames on his sleeve, and Caleb was on him before he could take another step. 30 seconds. 3 men down. Diego appeared from the bunkhouse, rifle in hand, eyes wide. Senora, I heard. Get rope, Ellie said. Now. She walked to the man she'd shot, the one still writhing in the dust, clutching his bleeding shoulder. She pressed her boot against his chest and aimed her rifle at his face. Who sent you? Go to hell. She pressed harder. He gasped. I've buried a husband. I've fought drought and disease and every kind of hardship this land can throw at a person. You think I won't pull this trigger? The man's eyes went wide. He believed her. Thornton, he choked out. Jasper Thornton. He paid us $50 each. To burn my ranch. To burn everything. Make it look like you fell asleep with a lamp burning. He coughed, blood flecking his lips. He wants the land. Said he's tired of waiting. Caleb hauled the unconscious runner over and dropped him in the dirt beside his friend. That one's not talking anytime soon. What about the third? Burns on his hands. He'll live. Ellie didn't take her eyes off the wounded man. Who else is Thornton working with? Who does his dirty work? The man hesitated. Fear flickered across his face, not fear of her. Fear of something else. I don't know names, I swear. We just get orders through a middleman. Big fella with a scar on his neck. Calls himself Dutch. Caleb went still. Dutch Harrigan. You know him, Ellie asked. I know of him. He runs with Marcus Dillard. Caleb crouched beside the wounded man, his voice dropping low and dangerous. Where's Dillard? I don't know. I've never even seen him. Dutch handles everything, I swear to God. Caleb grabbed his wounded shoulder and squeezed. The man screamed. Where? The old Miller place. Dutch has been using it as a hideout. That's all I know, please. Caleb released him. The man sobbed, curling into himself. Ellie lowered her rifle. Her hands were shaking now, not from fear, but from something else. Something that felt like the first spark of a fire too long banked. Diego, she said quietly. Tie them up. We'll take them to the sheriff in the morning. Si, señora. She walked away from the barn, away from the groaning men and the smell of kerosene, until she reached the fence overlooking the eastern pasture. The moon hung fat and yellow over the hills. Somewhere out there, a coyote howled, footsteps behind her. Caleb. You handled yourself well, he said. Don't sound so surprised. I'm not. He came to stand beside her close enough that she could feel the heat of him. I've seen a lot of people freeze in a fight. You didn't. I stopped freezing a long time ago, Mr. Ashford. When you lose everything that matters, fear doesn't have much left to hold on to. He was quiet for a moment. Then, you didn't lose everything. She looked at him. His face was half in shadow, half in moonlight. I lost my husband, my future, my faith that the world made any kind of sense. But you're still here, still fighting. That's not living. That's just not dying. Caleb turned to face her fully. His eyes searched hers, and for a moment she felt exposed in a way she hadn't felt in years. My sister used to say something, he said quietly. She said surviving isn't the same as living, but it's where living starts. You can't build anything if you're dead. Sounds like she was wise. She was. His voice caught just barely. She was the best person I ever knew. Ellie felt something crack inside her chest. This man, this hard, dangerous man, carried the same weight she did. The weight of loss, the weight of guilt, the weight of all the things you should have said before it was too late. I'm sorry, she said, for what happened to her. I'm sorry for what happened to your husband. He paused. And I'm going to make sure the men responsible pay for it, both of them. She believed him. God help her, she believed him. The Miller place, she said. That's half a day's ride from here. I know. You're going after Dutch. Tonight if I can. No. The word came out sharper than she intended. Not tonight. Not alone. If Dutch is there, Dillard might be too. You ride in half-cocked, you'll get yourself killed. Mrs. Prescott. Ellie. She surprised herself by saying it. If we're going to do this together, you might as well call me by my name. Something shifted in his expression, a softening she hadn't seen before. Ellie, he repeated. I've been hunting Dillard for 3 years. I've come close twice. Both times someone warned him. Both times he slipped away. I'm not going to let that happen again. Then don't be stupid about it. We take those men to the sheriff tomorrow. We find out what he knows. Then we make a plan. The sheriff? You trust him? She hesitated. Sheriff Tom Greeley had been a friend of Henry's. Or so she'd thought. But 5 years of unanswered questions had taught her that trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. I don't trust anyone, she said finally. But Greeley's the law. If we're going to take down Thornton, we need evidence. Something that'll stick. Caleb's jaw tightened. Evidence won't bring my sister back. No. But a bullet won't either. She met his eyes. I want Thornton destroyed. Not just dead destroyed. I want everyone to know what he did. I want his name to be a curse. And the only way that happens is if we do this right. For a long moment he didn't respond. Then slowly he nodded. All right. We do it your way. For now. For now, she agreed. They stood there in the darkness, two people bound by grief and vengeance, and Ellie wondered when exactly her life had become something out of a dime novel. Then again, maybe it always had been. Maybe she just hadn't been paying attention. The ride to Salida the next morning was long and hot. Ellie and Caleb rode in front, the three bound men tied to their horses behind them, Diego bringing up the rear with his rifle across his saddle. People stopped and stared as they came down the main street. Whispers followed them like dust clouds. "That's Eleanor Prescott. Who's the man with her? Lord, look at those prisoners." Sheriff Tom Greeley stepped out of his office, coffee cup in hand, and froze. "Eleanor," he said slowly. "What in God's name?" "These men tried to burn my ranch last night, Tom. Tried to kill me in my sleep." Greeley's face went pale. "What? You heard me." She swung down from her horse, her boots hitting the dirt hard. "They said Jasper Thornton paid them $50 each. Said they get their orders from a man called Dutch Harrigan." The coffee cup slipped from Greeley's fingers. It shattered on the boardwalk, brown liquid spreading across the wood. "Now," Ellie continued, her voice cold as winter, "you're going to lock these men up. You're going to take their statements. And then you're going to tell me everything you know about Thornton's connection to my husband's death." "Eleanor, don't lie to me, Tom." She stepped closer, close enough to see the sweat beading on his forehead. "You were Henry's friend. You investigated his murder. You told me it was bandits. Random violence. But you knew, didn't you? You knew something wasn't right." Greeley's eyes darted to Caleb, then back to her. "Who's this?" "Caleb Ashford, bounty hunter. He's looking for Marcus Dillard." The sheriff's face went from pale to gray. "Dillard. You know the name." "Everyone in this territory knows that name." Greeley swallowed hard. "He's a ghost, Eleanor, a killer for hire. Nobody's ever gotten close enough to—" "Then we'll be the first." She grabbed his arm, pulling him close. "I'm done waiting, Tom. I'm done accepting lies. Either you help me find the truth, or I'll find it myself, and I'll make sure everyone knows you stood in my way." Greeley stared at her for a long moment. Something was warring behind his eyes. Fear, guilt, maybe something like shame. Finally, he pulled his arm free. "Get those men inside," he said to his deputy. "Lock them up separate. I don't want them talking to each other." As the prisoners were hauled away, Greeley turned back to Ellie. His voice dropped low. "Not here. My office. Both of you." Ellie exchanged a glance with Caleb. He nodded slightly. They followed the sheriff inside. The office was small and cluttered, wanted posters covering one wall, a gun rack on another. Greeley closed the door and pulled the curtain across the window. "What I'm about to tell you," he said, "could get us all killed." "I've been almost killed twice in 2 days," Ellie said. "I'm getting used to it." Greeley didn't smile. He moved to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a worn leather folder. Inside were papers, letters, receipts, a map with markings. "6 months after Henry died," he said, "I got an anonymous letter. No signature, no return address. Just a note saying that if I wanted to know what really happened to Henry Prescott, I should look into a man named Marcus Dillard." Ellie's heart stopped. "You never told me." "I couldn't." Greeley's voice cracked. "Don't you understand? A week after I got that letter, someone burned my brother's barn in Denver. A month later, my niece was nearly run down by a carriage in the street. No witnesses, no explanation, just accidents." He looked at her, eyes haunted. "They were watching me, Eleanor. They're always watching. The moment I started asking questions about Dillard, they made it clear if I kept digging, people I loved would die. So you stopped." "I stopped." He closed his eyes. "God forgive me, I stopped." Caleb stepped forward. "What about the letter? Do you still have it?" Greeley pulled out a single sheet of paper, yellowed with age. He handed it to Caleb, who studied it intently. "The handwriting," Caleb murmured. "I've seen it before." "Where?" "I don't know, but I'll remember." He folded the letter carefully, and tucked it into his coat. "What else do you have?" Greeley spread the papers across his desk. Receipts from Thornton's bank. Large withdrawals cash made the week before Henry's cattle drive. The week before your sister was killed. He pointed to a map. And this, a map showing all the properties Thornton's acquired in the last 5 years. Every single one had an owner who died under suspicious circumstances. Ellie stared at the map. Copper Ridge Ranch was circled in red. "He's been planning this for years," she whispered. "Thornton wants to build an empire," Greeley said. "The railroad's coming through, and whoever controls the land along that route will be rich beyond imagining. He's been clearing a path, buying up land, eliminating anyone who won't sell. And Dillard's his weapon. Dillard, Dutch Harrigan, probably others. A whole network of killers and thugs, all working for a man who sits in his fancy office and keeps his hands clean." Ellie felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. "How do we prove it?" Greeley hesitated. "There's one person who might be able to help. A woman named Rosa Delgado. She used to work for Thornton, kept his books before he fired her last spring. Word is she took some documents with her when she left. Insurance in case Thornton ever came after her. Where is she now? That's the problem. She disappeared. Some say she's hiding in Mexico. Others say she's dead." Greeley shook his head. "But if anyone has evidence that could bring Thornton down, it's her." Caleb looked at Ellie. "We need to find her. We need to stay alive first." She turned to Greeley. "Those men in your cells, Thornton will know they've been captured. He'll either try to silence them, or he'll come after me harder. I can hold them for a few days, charge them with attempted murder-arson. But Eleanor—" Greeley's voice dropped. "You need to be careful. Thornton's got friends everywhere. The mayor, the judge, half the businessmen in town. If you go after him openly, you'll be fighting the whole system." "Then I'll fight the whole system." Caleb put a hand on her arm. Just briefly. Just enough. "Not alone," he said quietly. "You won't be fighting alone." "What?" She looked at him, this stranger who'd ridden into her life less than 2 days ago. This man with his own grief, his own mission, his own reasons to burn down everything Jasper Thornton had built. "No," she said. "I suppose I won't." They left the sheriff's office as the sun climbed toward noon. The heat was already brutal, pressing down on the town like a weight. "Dutch Harrigan," Ellie said as they walked toward their horses. "You mentioned him before. Who is he?" "Dillard's right hand. They served together in the war union side, believe it or not. After the fighting ended, they went wrong. Started hiring out their guns to anyone who'd pay." Caleb's voice was flat, controlled. "Dutch is dangerous, but he's also careless. He talks too much, drinks too much. If anyone knows where Dillard's hiding, it's him. And he's at the Miller place. Maybe, if those men were telling the truth. Only one way to find out." Caleb looked at her sharply. "You're not coming." "The hell I'm not." "Ellie, this isn't a fence to mend or a banker to stare down. Dutch Harrigan has killed more men than I can count. If things go wrong, then I'll die doing something that matters." She grabbed his arm, forcing him to face her. "Listen to me. I've spent 5 years sitting on that ranch, waiting for something to change. Waiting for answers that never came. I'm done waiting. If there's even a chance that Dutch knows what happened to Henry, I'm going to be there when you ask him." Caleb stared at her. His jaw worked muscles tight beneath the stubble. "You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met." "I'll take that as a compliment." For a moment, just a moment, something almost like warmth flickered in his eyes. "All right," he said. "But we do this smart. We scout the place first. We don't go in shooting. And if I tell you to run, you run." "I don't run, Mr. Ashford." "Then you better be as good with that rifle as you think you are." She smiled. It felt strange on her face, like a muscle she'd forgotten she had. "Guess you'll find out." They mounted their horses and rode out of town, the sun burning overhead, the road stretching toward the Miller place like a path into hell. Neither of them looked back. The ride took most of the day. They stuck to the back trails, avoiding the main roads where Thornton's men might be watching. Ellie led the way. She knew this country better than any map. As the sun began its descent toward the western hills, she reined in her horse and pointed. There, past that ridge. Caleb studied the terrain. The Miller place sat in a shallow valley surrounded by scrub brush and dying cottonwoods. A single plume of smoke rose from the chimney. Someone's home, he murmured. Could be Dutch, could be squatters, could be a trap. Only one way to find out. He dismounted and pulled his rifle from its scabbard. We leave the horses here. Go in on foot. Ellie nodded and swung down from her saddle. Her legs ached, her back ached, and she realized with a start that she hadn't eaten since dawn. None of that mattered. What mattered was what waited in that valley. They crept down the ridge as the last light faded, moving from shadow to shadow. The farmhouse grew larger as they approached a ramshackle building with broken windows and a sagging porch. 2 horses stood in the yard, tied to a post. 2 men at least, Caleb whispered. I can count Mr. Ashford. He almost smiled. Almost. They reached the edge of the yard and crouched behind an overturned wagon. Voices drifted from inside the house, low and distinct. Then the door opened. A man stepped onto the porch, big, broad-shouldered, a scar running from his ear to his collarbone. Dutch Harrigan. He stretched, yawned, and lit a cigarette. The match flared orange in the gathering darkness. Hey, Marcus, he called back into the house. You want coffee or whiskey? Ellie's blood froze. Marcus Dillard was inside that house. Caleb's hand closed around her wrist like iron. She looked at him. His face had gone completely still, the face of a man who'd just seen a ghost. He's here, Caleb breathed. After 3 years, he's here. Caleb. She kept her voice low, urgent. We need to think. We need a plan. But she could see it in his eyes. 3 years of hunting. 3 years of grief. 3 years of imagining this moment. He wasn't thinking anymore. He was moving. Caleb, wait. Too late. He rose from behind the wagon and walked into the yard. Rifle raised, his voice cutting through the darkness like a blade. Marcus Dillard, come out and face me. Dutch spun cigarette falling from his lips. His hand dropped to his holster. Who the hell? Don't. Caleb's rifle pointed at Dutch's chest. Touch that gun and I'll put a bullet through your heart before you clear leather. The door burst open. A second man appeared, lean, dark-haired, with eyes like chips of black ice. He held a pistol aimed directly at Caleb. Marcus Dillard. Well, well, Dillard said, his voice smooth as silk and twice as cold. If it isn't little Caleb Ashford. I wondered when you'd catch up. 3 years, Caleb growled. 3 years I've been chasing your shadow. And now you've found me. Dillard smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Question is, what are you going to do about it? From behind the wagon, Ellie watched the scene unfold. Her rifle was in her hands. Her finger was on the trigger. But she couldn't get a clean shot, not with Caleb standing between her and Dillard. Think, she told herself. Think. You killed my sister, Caleb said. You shot her in her own home. Did I? Dillard tilted his head. I kill a lot of people, Ashford. It's hard to keep track. You're going to remember her. I'm going to make sure of it. Touching, truly. Dillard's smile widened. But here's the thing, you're not going to kill me tonight. You want to know why? Enlighten me. Because I know things. Things about Jasper Thornton. Things about Henry Prescott's murder. Things that could bring down every corrupt official from here to Austin. His eyes glittered. Kill me, and those secrets die with me. Caleb's finger tightened on the trigger. Ellie could see the war raging behind his eyes. He's lying, she called out, stepping from behind the wagon. He's trying to save his own skin. Dutch and Dillard both turned toward her. Well, well, Dillard murmured. The widow Prescott. I heard you were still alive. Thornton's going to be disappointed." "Thornton can rot in hell." "Oh, he will, eventually. But not before you do." Dillard's pistol swung toward her. "Drop the rifle, Mrs. Prescott, now." "Ellie, don't," Caleb started. "I said drop it." She didn't drop it. Instead, she fired. The bullet caught Dutch Harrigan in the leg. He screamed and went down, his pistol clattering across the porch. Dillard spun back toward her, but Caleb was faster. He lunged, tackling Dillard off the porch. They crashed into the dirt together, grappling for the gun. Ellie ran forward, but Dutch, bleeding, snarling, grabbed her ankle as she passed. She fell hard, the breath knocked from her lungs. He crawled on top of her, hands closing around her throat. "Stupid bitch," he hissed. "I'm going to—" She drove her knee into his groin. He doubled over with a strangled gasp, and she grabbed the nearest rock and brought it down on his skull. He went limp. She scrambled to her feet, gasping, and turned toward Caleb. He and Dillard were still fighting, rolling through the dust, each struggling for control of the pistol. Dillard was faster, more experienced, but Caleb fought with a fury that made up for it. Then a shot rang out. Both men went still. Ellie's heart stopped. For a horrible moment, she couldn't tell who'd been hit. Then Caleb rolled away, clutching his side. Blood seeped through his fingers. Dillard rose slowly, the smoking pistol in his hand. He aimed it at Caleb's head. "Goodbye, Ashford?" "No." Ellie raised her rifle. Dillard looked at her. That cold reptilian smile. "You're too slow, Mrs. Prescott. You'll never—" She pulled the trigger. The bullet took him in the shoulder. He spun, cursing, the pistol flying from his grip. Ellie didn't hesitate. She ran to Caleb, grabbed him under the arms, and dragged him toward the horses. "Leave me," he gasped. "Get out of here." "Shut up." Behind them, Dillard was screaming, not in pain, but in rage. "Dutch, get up, you useless." Ellie didn't look back. She hoisted Caleb onto his horse, mounted her own, and kicked both animals into a gallop. They rode into the darkness, blood trailing behind them. Dillard's curses fading into the night. They made it 3 miles before Caleb slumped forward in his saddle. Ellie caught him just before he fell. His face was pale, slick with sweat. The blood had soaked through his shirt, his coat spreading like ink across his side. "Stay with me," she said. "Caleb, stay with me." "Hurts," he mumbled. "Hurts like hell." I know. She looked around, desperate. They were in the middle of nowhere, miles from town, miles from the ranch. If she didn't stop the bleeding— Think. There, a rock outcropping, sheltered from the wind. Not much, but enough. She dragged him from the horse and half carried him to the rocks, laid him down as gently as she could, tore open his shirt to examine the wound. The bullet had gone through in one side, out the other. Clean, but deep. Too much blood. Too much. "I need to stop the bleeding," she said, more to herself than to him. "I need my saddlebag." His voice was a rasp. "There's a flask, whiskey, and cloth." She found both. Poured the whiskey over the wound. He screamed, the sound cutting through the night, and pressed the cloth hard against his side. "Hold on," she whispered. "Just hold on." His hand found hers, squeezed weakly. "Ellie, don't talk. Save your strength." "Ellie." His eyes found hers in the darkness. "Thank you." "For what?" "Getting you shot. For not letting me die alone." Her throat tightened. She couldn't speak. So she just held his hand and pressed the cloth against his wound, and prayed to a God she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. The night stretched on. The stars wheeled overhead. And somewhere in the distance, coyotes howled at the moon, a sound like grief, like longing, like all the things they couldn't say out loud. Caleb's fever broke sometime before dawn. Ellie had stayed awake all night, changing the bandages, dripping water between his cracked lips, watching his chest rise and fall with each labored breath. When his eyes finally opened, clear-focused, she nearly wept with relief. "You're still here," he rasped. "Where else would I be?" He tried to sit up. Pain flashed across his face and he fell back gasping. "Easy." She pressed a hand against his chest. "The bullet went clean through, but you lost a lot of blood. You need to rest." "Can't rest. Dillard knows we're coming now. He'll run." "He's wounded too. I hit him in the shoulder." "Won't slow him down much." Caleb gritted his teeth and forced himself upright, one hand pressed against his bandaged side. "We need to move." "You can barely stand." "Then help me stand." She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was a damn fool who'd get himself killed. But she saw the fire in his eyes, the same fire she'd felt burning in her own chest since the night those men tried to burn her ranch. "Fine," she said. "But we're not going after Dillard. Not yet." "Then where?" "Back to the ranch. We need to regroup. Figure out our next move." Caleb shook his head. "Every hour we wait. Every hour we wait is an hour you don't bleed to death in the middle of nowhere." She grabbed his arm and pulled it over her shoulders. "Now shut up and let me help you onto your horse." He was heavier than she expected. Or maybe she was just tired. Either way, getting him mounted took everything she had. By the time they were both in the saddle, the sun was climbing over the eastern hills, and her arms were shaking. They rode slow, sticking to the back trails. Caleb drifted in and out of consciousness, his body swaying with each step of his horse. Ellie kept one hand on his reins, guiding both animals through the brush. Halfway back to Copper Ridge, she heard hoofbeats behind them. Her heart seized. She pulled both horses behind a stand of mesquite and drew her pistol waiting. The rider came into view. Dark hair, weathered face, a familiar rifle across his saddle. Diego. "Señora!" He reined in, hard dust swirling around him. "Thank God. When you didn't come back last night, I thought, we ran into trouble." She holstered her weapon. "Caleb's hurt. I need to get him to the ranch." Diego's eyes widened when he saw the blood soaking through Caleb's bandages. "Madre de Dios. What happened?" "Marcus Dillard happened." The name hit Diego like a slap. His face went pale. "Dillard, he's here. You know him." Diego didn't answer right away. His jaw worked muscles tight beneath his weathered skin. "Diego!" Ellie's voice sharpened. "What aren't you telling me?" "Señora?" He looked away. "There are things about the night your husband died. Things I should have told you years ago." The world tilted. Ellie gripped her saddle horn to keep from falling. "What things?" "Not here. Not now." Diego glanced at Caleb, who had gone deathly pale. "We need to get him inside. Then I'll tell you everything." They reached Copper Ridge an hour later. Diego helped her carry Caleb into the house and lay him on the bed in the spare room. While Ellie cleaned and rebandaged his wound, Diego built a fire and boiled water for compresses. When she finally emerged from the sick room, Diego was waiting at the kitchen table. A bottle of whiskey sat between them, 2 glasses poured. Ellie sat down heavily. Her bones ached. Her eyes burned. But sleep would have to wait. "Talk," she said. Diego took a long drink, set the glass down, stared at it. "The night of the cattle drive," he began. "I was supposed to ride with Señor Henry, but at the last minute he told me to stay behind. Said he had a feeling something bad was going to happen. He never told me that. He didn't want to worry you. You'd been fighting that week, he mentioned it to me. Said he wanted to make things right when he got back." Diego's voice cracked. "He loved you, Señora. More than anything." Ellie's throat tightened. "Go on." "I stayed behind like he asked, but I couldn't sleep that night. Something felt wrong. So I rode out after them, followed the trail toward Cedar Pass." He paused. "That's when I saw them." "Saw who?" 3 men on horseback, riding hard in the opposite direction. One of them had blood on his coat. Ellie's blood ran cold. "You saw the killers." "I didn't know that's what they were. Not then. I thought maybe they were just drifters running from something. But then I found the cattle scattered across the valley. And Senor Henry—" His voice broke. He was already dead when I got there, shot in the back. His gun was still in the holster. He never even had a chance to draw. Tears burned Ellie's eyes. She'd imagined Henry's death 1,000 times. Imagined him fighting, struggling, going down swinging. But this shot in the back never even saw it coming. "Why didn't you tell me?" The words came out raw, ragged. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because 2 days later, one of those men came to the ranch." Ellie went still. "What?" "He came while you were in town making arrangements for the funeral. He found me in the barn and put a knife to my throat." Diego's hand trembled as he reached for his whiskey. "He said if I ever told anyone what I saw, he'd come back and kill everyone on this ranch. You, the other hands, everyone." "And you believed him?" "Senora, I looked into his eyes. They were dead, empty, like staring into a grave." Diego shuddered. "I've seen many bad men in my life, but I'd never seen anything like him." He meant every word. "What did he look like?" Diego was quiet for a long moment. Then, tall, dark hair, a scar on his neck here. He traced a line below his ear. Dutch Harrigan. Ellie's hands balled into fists. "Dutch came here, to this ranch, 2 days after Henry died." "See. And Dillard? Did you see him?" "No. But the man Dutch, he mentioned a name. Said his boss wanted to make sure there were no loose ends. Said his boss didn't like loose ends." Diego met her eyes. "The name he used was Marcus." Everything clicked into place. The cattle drive hadn't been a random robbery. It was an assassination. Thornton had ordered Henry killed to clear the way for his land grab, and he'd sent Dillard and Dutch to do the job. 5 years. 5 years she'd lived with a lie, and Diego had known. Diego had kept the secret, let her believe her husband's death was senseless violence, random cruelty. "You should have told me." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I know." Tears streamed down Diego's weathered cheeks. "I know, Senora. I've carried this guilt every day since, but I was afraid. For you, for all of us. I thought if I kept quiet, if I just kept my head down, maybe they'd leave us alone." "They didn't leave us alone. They've been trying to drive me off this land ever since." "I know. And every time something happened, the poisoned well, the cut fences, the fires, I knew it was them. I knew, and I said nothing." He fell to his knees in front of her, grabbing her hands. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Whatever you want to do to me, I'll accept it. But please, Senora, don't let my cowardice be the reason they win." Ellie stared down at him. This man who had worked for her family for 20 years. This man who had watched her husband die and said nothing. She should hate him. Part of her did, but another part, the part that had spent 5 years living in fear herself, understood. "Get up," she said quietly. Diego rose, wiping his face. "What you did was wrong. Keeping that secret, letting me believe a lie, I don't know if I can ever forgive you for that." She paused. "But right now, I need everyone I can trust. And God help me, Diego, you're one of the few people left." "What do you want me to do?" "Watch over Caleb. Keep him alive." She stood, her exhaustion forgotten, replaced by something harder, something colder. "I'm going to town." "Senora, if Thornton's men see you." "Let them see me." She grabbed her rifle from its place above the fireplace. "I'm done hiding. I'm done being afraid. It's time Jasper Thornton learned what it means to make an enemy of Eleanor Prescott." She rode into Salida like a woman possessed. The town was quiet under the midday sun, too quiet. Shops that should have been bustling stood half empty. People hurried along the boardwalks, with their heads down, not meeting anyone's eyes. Something had changed. Something had shifted. Ellie tied her horse outside the sheriff's office and pushed through the door. The office was empty. "Tom." She moved deeper inside toward the cells in the back. "Tom, are you here?" The cells were empty too. The 3 men she and Caleb had captured gone. Her blood ran cold. "Looking for someone?" She spun. Sheriff Tom Greeley stood in the doorway, but he wasn't alone. 2 men flanked him, hard-eyed, well-armed, wearing the look of hired guns. "Tom." She kept her voice steady. "What's going on? Where are the prisoners?" "Released this morning." His voice was flat dead. "Lack of evidence." "Lack of they tried to burn my ranch. They confessed. Their word against yours." Greeley wouldn't meet her eyes. "Judge Harmon ruled there wasn't enough to hold them. Judge Harmon is in Thornton's pocket, and you know it." "Careful, Eleanor." One of the men beside Greeley stepped forward. "Talk like that could get a person in trouble." "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact." The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Thornton's a respected businessman, a pillar of the community. Making accusations without proof, well, that's the kind of thing that ruins reputations, gets people hurt." Ellie's hand moved toward her pistol. "I wouldn't," the second man said. His hand was already on his gun. 2 against 1. Bad odds even for a woman who can shoot. "Tom." Ellie looked at the sheriff, searching for some trace of the man who'd been her husband's friend. "Are you really going to let this happen? Are you going to let them threaten me in your own office?" Greeley's jaw tightened. For a moment, just a moment, she saw something flicker in his eyes. Shame, guilt, fear. Then it was gone. "You should go home, Eleanor," he said quietly. "Take care of your ranch. Forget about all this." "Forget?" Her voice cracked with rage. "They killed my husband, Tom. They killed Henry, and you're telling me to forget. I'm telling you to survive." He finally met her eyes, and what she saw there chilled her to the bone. Some fights can't be won. Some enemies are too powerful to beat. The best you can do is walk away while you still can. "I'm not walking away." "Then you're a fool." He turned and walked out, the 2 men following close behind. Ellie stood alone in the empty office, her heart pounding, her mind racing. Thornton had gotten to Greeley. Threatened him, bribed him, broken him. It didn't matter which. The sheriff was gone. The law was gone. She was on her own. No, not entirely. She thought of Caleb lying wounded at her ranch. She thought of Diego carrying his guilt like a stone around his neck. She thought of Rosa Delgado, the woman who might have the evidence to bring Thornton down. If Rosa was still alive. Ellie walked out of the sheriff's office and headed for the telegraph station. The operator, a nervous young man named Willie, looked up as she entered. "Mrs. Prescott, I wasn't expecting—" "I need to send a message to every town within 100 miles. She pulled a coin from her pocket and slapped it on the counter. "I'm looking for a woman named Rosa Delgado. Mexican, late 30s, used to work for Jasper Thornton. There's a reward for information on her whereabouts." Willie's face went pale. "Mrs. Prescott, I don't think—" "I'm not asking what you think. I'm asking you to do your job." She leaned closer. "Unless you're on Thornton's payroll, too." The young man swallowed hard. "No, ma'am. I don't want any trouble." "Then send the message." He hesitated. Then with shaking hands he began to tap out the telegram. Ellie watched him work, her mind already racing ahead. The message would spread. Word would get out. And if Rosa was alive, if she was anywhere within reach, maybe, just maybe, she'd hear it. It was a long shot. But long shots were all she had left. She was halfway back to her horse when a voice stopped her. "Mrs. Prescott?" She turned. A woman stood in the shadows of the alley beside the general store. Middle-aged, dark-haired, wearing a faded dress and a look of desperate fear. "Who are you?" "My name is Rosa Delgado." Ellie's heart stopped. "You're the woman you're looking for?" "Yes." Rosa glanced nervously down the street. "We need to talk, but not here. Thornton has eyes everywhere." "Then where?" "There's a church on the edge of town, abandoned. Meet me there in an hour." Rosa started to turn away, then stopped. And Mrs. Prescott. Come alone. If I see anyone else, I disappear. And this time, you'll never find me. She melted back into the shadows and was gone. Ellie stood frozen, her pulse racing. Rosa Delgado. The one person who might have evidence against Thornton. The one person who could help her bring down the man who'd destroyed her life. She'd found her. Or Rosa had found her. Either way, everything was about to change. The abandoned church sat at the edge of town, its steeple leaning its windows dark. Ellie approached on foot, leaving her horse tied behind the old livery stable. Her rifle was in her hands, her pistol on her hip. She wasn't taking any chances. The door creaked as she pushed it open. Inside, dust motes floated in shafts of fading light. Broken pews. A shattered altar. The smell of rot and forgotten prayers. Rosa stood near the back, half hidden in shadow. When she saw Ellie was alone, some of the tension left her shoulders. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Thank you for finding me." Ellie moved closer, keeping her rifle ready. "You said you have evidence against Thornton." "I have more than evidence." Rosa reached into her bag and pulled out a leather folder thick with papers. "I have everything. Bank records, letters, names of the men he's hired to do his killing." She held up a single sheet of paper. "And this, a contract, signed by Jasper Thornton himself, paying $10,000 to Marcus Dillard for the elimination of Henry Prescott." Ellie's knees nearly buckled. She grabbed a broken pew to steady herself. "A contract," she breathed. "He put it in writing." Thornton is arrogant. He believes he's untouchable. He never imagined anyone would have the courage to betray him. Rosa's voice hardened. "He was wrong. Why did you take these documents? Why risk your life?" Rosa was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Because my brother worked for him. My brother was one of his men. And when my brother tried to leave when he said he couldn't stomach the killing anymore, Thornton had him murdered." Tears glittered in her eyes. "Dillard did it personally, made it look like a riding accident. But I knew the truth. I've always known. I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be angry." Rosa thrust the folder into Ellie's hands. "Take these documents to the federal marshal in Austin. He's the only lawman Thornton can't buy. Show him the contract. Show him the names. And when Thornton swings from a rope, I want you to tell him Rosa Delgado sends her regards." Ellie clutched the folder to her chest. "What about you? If Thornton finds out you've betrayed him, he'll kill me, I know." Rosa smiled sad and fierce. "But I've been dead inside since my brother's murder. At least now my death will mean something." "Come with me. We can protect you." "No." Rosa shook her head. "If I disappear, Thornton will know something's wrong. He'll send men after you before you ever reach Austin. But if I stay, if I act like nothing has changed, you'll have time. Time to get these documents to someone who can use them." "Rosa, please." The woman grabbed her hands. "Let me do this. Let me be the one who finally brings him down. It's the only way I can live with what I've done, with what I failed to do when my brother was still alive." Ellie looked into Rosa's eyes. She saw grief there, guilt, determination. She understood all of it. "All right," she said quietly. "But if something goes wrong, if Thornton comes for you, send word to Copper Ridge Ranch. I'll come. I swear it. I know you will." Rosa squeezed her hands. "Now go. Before someone sees us together." Ellie tucked the folder inside her coat and moved toward the door. She paused at the threshold. "Rosa." "Yes. Thank you. For being brave enough to do what others couldn't." Rosa smiled just barely. "Thank you for being brave enough to listen." Ellie stepped out into the fading daylight and walked away without looking back. The folder pressed against her chest felt heavier than anything she'd ever carried. But for the first time in 5 years, she felt something other than grief. She felt hope. The ride back to Copper Ridge took longer than it should have. Ellie kept to the back trails, doubling back twice to make sure she wasn't being followed. By the time she reached the ranch, the sun had set and the first stars were beginning to appear. Diego met her at the gate, rifle in hand. "Señora, thank God." He fell into step beside her horse. "Caleb's been asking for you. His fever's down, but he's restless, won't stay in bed." "Sounds about right." She dismounted and handed him the reins. "Anyone else come by while I was gone?" "No, but I've had the men watching the roads. Something feels wrong, Señora. The air's too still." She nodded. She felt it too. Inside the house, she found Caleb sitting up in bed, his face pale but determined. When he saw her, relief flooded his features. "You're back." "I'm back." She pulled the folder from her coat and held it up. "And I brought something." She told him everything. Rosa. The documents. The contract with Thornton's signature paying Dillard to kill Henry. When she finished, Caleb was silent for a long moment. Then he reached out and took her hand. "This is it," he said quietly. "This is what we needed. It's enough to hang Thornton 10 times over, but we need to get it to Austin, to the federal marshal." "How far?" 4 days' ride, maybe 3 if we push hard." "I can ride." "The hell you can. You could barely sit up this morning." "I'll manage." His grip tightened on her hand. "Ellie, I'm not letting you make this trip alone. Thornton will have men watching every road out of the county. If they catch you with those documents, then they catch me, but at least I'll have tried." "No." His voice hardened. "Not alone. We started this together. We finish it together." She looked at him, this stubborn, wounded, infuriating man who'd ridden into her life less than a week ago. This man who'd nearly died trying to help her find the truth. This man who made her feel things she'd sworn she'd never feel again. "Fine," she said. "We leave at first light." "First light," he agreed. They sat there in the lamplight, hands intertwined, the weight of everything pressing down on them. Outside, the wind picked up, whispering through the eaves like a voice from far away. Tomorrow, they would ride toward Austin, and whatever fate waited for them there. But tonight they had this moment, this connection, this fragile, impossible thing growing between them in the midst of chaos and death. Ellie didn't know what to call it. Didn't know if it had a name. But for the first time in 5 years, she wasn't afraid to find out. The night deepened. Somewhere far off, a coyote howled, a long, lonely sound that echoed across the empty plains. And in the darkness outside Copper Ridge Ranch, a shadow moved. A man on horseback, watching, waiting. Marcus Dillard smiled, his wounded shoulder throbbing beneath the bandage. He'd tracked them here easily enough. The widow wasn't as clever as she thought. None of them ever were. He reached into his coat and pulled out a match, struck it against his saddle horn, watched the flame dance in the darkness. "Soon," he whispered. "Very soon." The match burned down to his fingers. He let it fall. And in the house below, Ellie Prescott slept on, unaware of the storm that was coming. They never made it to first light. Ellie woke to the smell of smoke. She bolted upright, heart hammering. Through the window, an orange glow flickered against the darkness. Not sunrise. Fire. "Caleb!" She grabbed her rifle and ran to the spare room. Caleb was already on his feet, pulling on his boots, his face tight with pain. "The barn," he said. "They're burning the barn." Gunshots split the night. Glass shattered somewhere in the house. Diego's voice roared from outside, followed by more shooting. "Stay here," Ellie said. "Like hell." She didn't have time to argue. She ran for the front door, threw it open, and nearly died. A bullet tore through the doorframe, inches from her head. She dropped low, firing blind into the darkness. Someone screamed. She couldn't tell if it was one of theirs or one of hers. "Señora!" Diego appeared beside her, blood running from a gash on his forehead. They came from the North Ridge. 8, maybe 10 men. They hit the barn first, then the bunkhouse. The hands? Martinez is down. The others are pinned near the corral. Another volley of gunfire raked the house. Ellie pressed herself against the wall, her mind racing. Where's their leader? Where's Dillard? I haven't seen him, just the hired guns. That was wrong. Dillard was here, she could feel it. He wouldn't send men to finish the job without watching it happen. Caleb appeared in the doorway, pistol drawn, moving like every step cost him something precious. Back door, he said. I'll circle around, come at them from the side. You can barely walk. I can shoot. His eyes found hers in the firelight. Trust me, Ellie. I've done this before. She wanted to stop him, wanted to lock him in that room and keep him safe. But she saw the determination in his face, the same look she'd seen in her own mirror for 5 years. Don't get killed, she said. Same to you. He slipped out the back. Ellie turned to Diego. The documents. They're in the kitchen, under the loose floorboard by the stove. If anything happens to me, nothing will happen to you. If anything happens, she repeated, you get those papers to Austin. You find the federal marshal. You tell him everything. Diego's face crumpled. Senora, I can't. You can. You will. She grabbed his arm. This is your chance, Diego. Your chance to make it right. Don't waste it. For a long moment, he just stared at her. Then he nodded once sharp. Vaya con Dios, señora. Go. He disappeared into the house. Ellie turned back to the fight. The barn was fully engulfed now, flames roaring toward the sky. She could hear the horses screaming inside, and the sound tore at her heart. But she couldn't save them. She could only save herself. She moved along the porch, keeping low. A figure darted across the yard, one of Thornton's men running toward the house. She raised her rifle and fired. He went down hard and didn't get up. More gunfire from the corral. Her remaining hands were fighting back, but they were outgunned, outnumbered. It was only a matter of time. Then she saw him. Marcus Dillard stepped out of the shadows near the burning barn, his silhouette black against the flames. He walked slowly, deliberately, a pistol in each hand. No hurry, no fear. Like he was taking an evening stroll. Eleanor Prescott. His voice cut through the chaos. I know you can hear me. She pressed herself against the porch rail, watching. Your husband begged, you know, at the end, got down on his knees and begged for his life. Dillard laughed, cold and cruel. Said he had a wife waiting for him. Said he'd do anything if I let him go. Her finger tightened on the trigger. I shot him anyway, right through the back of the head. He never even saw it coming. Rage exploded through her, white-hot, blinding. She rose from cover and fired. Once, twice, 3 times. Dillard moved like water, slipping aside, returning fire. A bullet grazed her arm, burning like a brand. She ducked back, gasping. There she is. Dillard's laugh echoed across the yard. I was wondering when you'd show yourself. They told me you were tough. I wanted to see for myself. Come closer, and I'll show you exactly how tough. Oh, I intend to, but first, he raised his voice. Bring her out. 2 of his men emerged from behind the water trough, dragging someone between them. Rosa Delgado. Ellie's blood turned to ice. Rosa's face was bruised, her dress torn. She struggled weakly against her captors, but they held her firm. Found her hiding in town, Dillard said, almost conversationally. Seems she's been talking to people she shouldn't, passing along information that doesn't belong to her. Let her go. Let her go. Dillard pressed his pistol against Rosa's temple. Why would I do that? She's the one who started all this. Her and her big mouth. He leaned close to Rosa's ear. Your brother screamed for an hour before he died. Did you know that? An entire hour. I've never heard anything quite like it. Rosa spat in his face. Dillard didn't flinch. He just smiled, wiped the spit from his cheek, and cocked the hammer. Last chance, Mrs. Prescott. Come out where I can see you. Hands up, no weapons, or I paint the ground with her brains. Ellie's mind raced. She couldn't give herself up. Dillard would kill them both anyway. But she couldn't watch Rosa die, not after everything she'd sacrificed. Think. A gunshot cracked from somewhere behind the barn. One of Dillard's men jerked and fell. Caleb. Dillard spun, firing toward the sound. His men scattered, dragging Rosa with them. In the confusion, Ellie moved. She vaulted over the porch rail and hit the ground running. A bullet whizzed past her ear. She didn't stop. She ran straight for Rosa. One of the men holding her turned and raised his gun. Ellie shot him in the chest. He crumpled, releasing Rosa's arm. The second man swung his pistol toward Ellie. Rosa grabbed his wrist, yanked it down, sank her teeth into his hand. He screamed. Ellie pistol whipped him across the face. He dropped like a stone. "Come on!" She grabbed Rosa's arm. "Move!" They ran toward the house, bullets kicking up dust around their feet. Ellie felt an impact in her side, hot sharp, but she kept running. Couldn't stop. Wouldn't stop. They made it to the porch. Through the door, into the relative safety of the darkened kitchen. Ellie collapsed against the wall, her hand pressed to her side. It came away wet with blood. "You're hit!" Rosa gasped. "I noticed." The world was tilting. She forced it steady. "The documents. Where's Diego?" "Here, Senora." Diego emerged from the shadows, the leather folder clutched to his chest. His face was streaked with soot and tears. "Martinez is dead. So is Gutierrez. The others ran." "The horses?" "Gone. All of them." Ellie closed her eyes. No horses. No escape. Trapped in a burning ranch with a killer outside, and her lifeblood leaking through her fingers. This was it then. This was how it ended. No. She opened her eyes. The root cellar. Under the kitchen floor. Can we get out through there? Diego's face brightened. The tunnel. Senor Henry dug it years ago in case of Indian attacks. It comes out by the creek maybe 100 yards south. Then that's how we go. She struggled to her feet, Rosa steadying her. Diego, you take Rosa and the documents. Get to the creek. Follow it east until you hit the main road. What about you? Someone has to keep Dillard busy. Give you time to get away. Senora, no. That's an order. She grabbed the rifle leaning against the wall. Now go. Both of you. Rosa seized her hand. Eleanor. Thank you. For everything. Don't thank me yet. Save it for when Thornton's hanging from a rope. Diego pulled up the trapdoor in the kitchen floor. A musty smell rose from the darkness below. Rosa climbed down first, then Diego, the folder tucked inside his shirt. Vaya con Dios, Diego said again. Then they were gone, the trapdoor falling shut behind them. Ellie leaned against the wall and checked her pistol. 4 rounds left. Her rifle had maybe 6 more. 10 bullets between her and Marcus Dillard. Better make them count, she muttered. She moved toward the front of the house. Through the shattered window, she could see Dillard's men regrouping near the corral. 5 of them left, maybe 6. Dillard himself stood apart, reloading his pistols with calm precision. Where was Caleb? A shape moved in the darkness near the water trough. Caleb crawling toward cover, leaving a dark trail behind him. He was hurt. Hurt bad. Ellie's heart clenched. She had to get to him, had to help him. But if she left the house now, Dillard would cut her down before she made it 10 feet. Think. Her eyes fell on the oil lamp beside the door. Still lit, still burning. An idea formed. Desperate. Crazy. Probably fatal. Perfect. She grabbed the lamp and hurled it through the window. It shattered against the porch rail, oil spraying everywhere. The flames caught, instantly spreading across the dry wood. Dillard's men shouted in surprise. In the confusion, Ellie burst out the back door and ran for the water trough. Caleb! He looked up, his face pale as death. Blood soaked his entire side, pooling beneath him. Ellie, get out of here! Shut up! She hooked her arms under his shoulders and dragged. We're both getting out. I can't. I said shut up. She pulled him toward the remains of the bunkhouse. It was still standing, barely the fire not yet reached it. Inside, she propped him against the wall and examined his wound. Bad. The bullet had torn through his side deeper than before. He was losing blood fast. You should have run, he whispered. I don't run, remember? He tried to smile. It turned into a grimace. Ellie, don't. Her voice cracked. Don't you dare say goodbye. I'm not. He reached up, touched her face with trembling fingers. I just wanted to say, I'm glad I found you, even if this is how it ends. It's not ending. She pressed her hand over his wound, trying to stop the bleeding. We're going to get out of this. We're going to make it to Austin. We're going to watch Thornton hang. You really believe that? She looked into his eyes, those storm gray eyes that had seen too much death, too much loss, those eyes that had somehow found their way to her. I have to, she said. It's all I have left. Outside, Dillard's voice rang out again. I know you're still here, Mrs. Prescott. The house is burning. Your friends are dead or dying. There's nowhere left to run. She peered through a crack in the wall. Dillard was walking toward the bunkhouse, his men fanning out behind him. The fire from the house cast dancing shadows across his face. Here's what's going to happen, he continued. You're going to come out. You're going to tell me where those documents are. And then, if you're very lucky, I'll make it quick. Go to hell, she shouted back. Already been there, ma'am. Didn't care for it much. He raised his pistol. Last chance. Come out or I burn you out. Caleb's hand closed around hers. Give me a gun. You can barely breathe. I can still shoot. His voice hardened. I didn't come all this way to die hiding in a shed. If Dillard wants me, he's going to have to earn it. She looked at him. This man who'd lost everything and kept fighting. This man who'd ridden into her life and turned it upside down. This man she was pretty sure she loved. She handed him her pistol. 4 rounds. 4's enough. She took up position by the door, rifle ready. Outside, Dillard's men were spreading out surrounding the bunkhouse. This was it. Caleb. Yeah. When this is over, if we somehow survive this, I want you to stay. He was quiet for a moment. Then, at the ranch. With me. Another pause. Then soft as a whisper. I'd like that. She smiled, despite everything, despite the blood and the fire and the death closing in around them. Then let's make sure we live long enough to see it. She kicked open the door and started shooting. The first man went down before he knew what hit him. The second turned to run and caught a bullet in the back. The third fired wild, his shot going wide, and Ellie put him down with a round to the chest. Then her rifle clicked empty. She threw herself back inside as bullets tore through the walls. Wood splintered around her. Something hot grazed her shoulder. Caleb. He rose from his position, pistol in hand, and fired through the window. Once. Twice. 2 more screams. 1 bullet left. Dillard stepped into the doorway. He moved faster than Ellie thought possible. His boot caught her in the ribs, sending her sprawling. The empty rifle flew from her hands. Caleb raised his pistol. Dillard shot first. The bullet took Caleb in the shoulder. He spun, fell, the pistol clattering across the floor. No! Ellie lunged for it. Dillard's boot came down on her hand. Bones crunched. She screamed. Enough! He pressed his pistol against her forehead. No more running. No more fighting. It's over. She looked up at him through a haze of pain. This man who had killed her husband. This monster who had destroyed everything she loved. You're right, she said quietly. It is over. Finally. Some sense. His finger tightened on the trigger. Then the gunshot came. But not from Dillard. From behind him. He staggered, a look of pure surprise crossing his face. Blood bloomed on his chest, once, twice, 3 times. He turned slowly to see who had shot him. Sheriff Tom Greeley stood in the doorway, his smoking revolver in hand. Behind him, a dozen men on horseback, Federal marshals, their badges glinting in the firelight. "Marcus Dillard," Greeley said, his voice shaking. "You're under arrest." Dillard laughed, a wet, horrible sound. Blood bubbled on his lips. "You think this changes anything? Thornton's already in custody." A man stepped forward, tall and grim-faced, a marshal's star on his chest. "Arrested an hour ago, along with half the county officials in his pocket. Your employer won't be helping anyone anymore." Dillard's smile faded. For the first time, real fear flickered in his eyes. "How?" "A woman named Rosa Delgado," the marshal said. "She made it to my office 3 hours ago with enough evidence to hang Thornton twice over. Said a woman named Eleanor Prescott sent her." Dillard turned to look at Ellie. She smiled at him through the blood and the pain. "My husband's name was Henry," she said quietly. "I wanted you to know that. Henry Prescott. And he didn't beg. He never begged for anything in his life." Dillard opened his mouth to respond. Then his eyes rolled back and he collapsed dead before he hit the ground. Ellie stared at his body for a long moment. 5 years of grief, 5 years of questions, 5 years of not knowing. It was over. She crawled to Caleb, pulling his head into her lap. His eyes fluttered open. "Did we win?" he whispered. "We won." Tears streamed down her face. "We won." He smiled, that same gentle half-smile that had undone her from the start. "Then I guess I owe you a longer stay." She laughed despite everything, despite the pain and the loss, and the fire still burning around them. "You're damn right you do." The marshals swarmed the ranch, putting out fires, tending to the wounded. Someone pulled Ellie away from Caleb so they could work on him. She didn't want to let go. "He's strong," one of the marshals told her. "He'll make it." She nodded, unable to speak. Sheriff Greeley approached her, hat in hands. His face was a map of shame and regret. "Mrs. Prescott, Save it." Her voice was exhausted but not unkind. "You came when it mattered. That's what counts." "I should have come sooner. I should have—" "Yes, you should have." She met his eyes. "But you didn't. And nothing you say now will change that. The only thing that matters is what you do next." He nodded slowly. "I'm going to testify. Against Thornton. Against all of them. Whatever it takes." "Good." She turned away, watching the marshals carry Caleb toward a wagon. "Then maybe you'll be able to live with yourself after all." She followed Caleb to the wagon and climbed in beside him. The first light of dawn was beginning to break over the hills, real dawn this time, not fire. A new day, a new beginning. She took Caleb's hand and held it tight as the wagon began to move. Behind her, the remains of Copper Ridge Ranch smoldered in the early light. She didn't look back. The trial of Jasper Thornton lasted 3 weeks. Ellie sat in the front row of the Austin courthouse every single day, her bandaged ribs aching, her broken hand splinted and wrapped. She didn't care about the pain. She needed to see this, needed to watch the man who'd destroyed her life finally answer for what he'd done. Thornton looked smaller in chains. The expensive suit was gone, replaced by prison gray. The smooth confidence had cracked, revealing something petty and afraid underneath. Good, Ellie thought. Let him be afraid. Let him know what it feels like. Rosa testified first. She told the jury about the documents, the contracts, the payments, the names of every man Thornton had hired to kill, intimidate, and destroy. Her voice never wavered. When Thornton's lawyer tried to discredit her, she stared him down with eyes like polished obsidian. "I watched my brother die because of that man," she said, pointing at Thornton. "I spent 3 years hiding in fear because of him. I have nothing left to lose, and that makes me the most dangerous witness you'll ever face." The lawyer sat down and didn't ask another question. Sheriff Greeley testified next. He admitted everything: the bribes he'd taken, the evidence he'd buried, the threats that had kept him silent. His voice broke twice during the testimony. Ellie watched him and felt something she hadn't expected. Pity. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But pity for a man who'd let fear turn him into something he despised. When it was Ellie's turn, she walked to the witness stand with her head high. "State your name for the record." "Eleanor Jane Prescott." "Mrs. Prescott, can you describe your relationship to the deceased Henry Prescott?" "He was my husband." Her voice was steady. "We were married for 23 years. He was the best man I ever knew." "And can you describe what happened on the night of June 14th, 1882? She told them. Told them about the cattle drive, the argument they'd had before he left, the 3 days of waiting, the men who brought his body home. "They told me it was bandits," she said. "Random violence. They told me there was no one to blame, no justice to be had. For 5 years I believed them." She looked directly at Thornton. "I was wrong." The prosecutor walked her through everything: the arson attempt, the confrontation with Dillard, the documents Rosa had provided. She answered each question clearly, precisely, without emotion. Until the end. "Mrs. Prescott, is there anything else you'd like to say to the court?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned to face the jury. "My husband was a good man. He worked hard. He loved his land. He loved me." Her voice cracked just barely. "He didn't deserve to die face down in the dirt, shot in the back by a coward who'd been paid to kill him. He deserved better. He deserved justice." She looked at Thornton again. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "I can't bring Henry back. Nothing will ever bring him back. But I can make sure the man responsible pays for what he did. And I can make sure no other woman has to sit in her empty house wondering why her husband never came home, believing a lie because the truth was too convenient to tell." She paused. The courtroom was silent. "That's all I want. That's all I've ever wanted. The truth. And the justice my husband deserved." She stepped down from the witness stand. Her legs were shaking. She didn't let it show. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they came back, Ellie held her breath. "On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree, how do you find guilty?" "On the charge of murder in the first degree and guilty." "On the charge of conspiracy to commit arson, guilty, 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 guilty. 12 counts in all. 12 nails in Jasper Thornton's coffin. The judge sentenced him to hang." Thornton screamed as they dragged him from the courtroom. Screamed that it wasn't fair, that he had powerful friends, that they'd all pay for this. His voice echoed off the marble walls until the doors slammed shut behind him. Ellie sat in her seat and wept. Not for Thornton. For Henry. For all the years she'd lost. For the justice that had finally come. Rosa found her after the verdict. The two women embraced without words. There was nothing to say. Nothing that needed saying. "What will you do now?" Ellie asked when they finally pulled apart. "Go home. To Mexico. I have family there, cousins I haven't seen in years." Rosa smiled, sad and hopeful at once. "It's time to stop hiding. Time to live again. You deserve that. So do you." Rosa squeezed her hands. "Take care of yourself, Eleanor Prescott. And take care of that bounty hunter of yours. He's a good man." Ellie felt heat rise to her cheeks. "He's not mine." "Not yet." Rosa's smile widened. "But he will be. I've seen the way he looks at you." She left before Ellie could respond. Caleb was waiting outside the courthouse, leaning against a post with his arm in a sling. He'd lost weight during the trial, his face gaunt from weeks of recovery and worry. But his eyes were the same, those storm-gray eyes that had seen too much and still managed to hope. "It's over," Ellie said. "I know." He straightened, wincing slightly. "I watched through the window." "Why didn't you come in?" "Wasn't my place. This was your fight, Ellie, your victory." He reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You did it. You brought him down. We did it." She caught his hand, held it against her cheek. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Sure you could. You're the most stubborn woman in Texas. Only Texas. Maybe the whole Southwest. He smiled that gentle half-smile she'd come to love. But I'm glad I was here. Glad I got to see it. They stood there for a long moment, the noise of the city swirling around them. Then Caleb spoke again, his voice careful. What happens now? What do you mean? The trial's over. Thornton's going to hang. Dillard's dead. He paused. There's nothing keeping me here anymore. Ellie's heart clenched. She'd known this moment was coming, known that eventually he'd have to decide stay or go. But she'd pushed it away, focused on the trial, refused to think about what came after. Now, after was here. Is that what you want? She asked quietly. To leave? No. The word came out rough, almost raw. God, no. But He pulled his hand back, ran it through his hair. I've spent 3 years chasing ghosts, Ellie. 3 years living for nothing but revenge. I don't know how to do anything else. Then learn. It's not that simple. Why not? Because. He turned away, his shoulders tight. Because I'm broken. Because the things I've done, the things I've seen, they don't just go away. I carry them with me everywhere. And you deserve better than that. You deserve someone who isn't haunted. Ellie stepped around him, forcing him to face her. You think I'm not haunted. You think I don't carry my own ghosts. Her voice sharpened. I spent 5 years blaming myself for Henry's death. 5 years believing that if I hadn't argued with him that night, if I'd just said I loved him instead of fighting over some damn fence, maybe he'd still be alive. That wasn't your fault. I know that now, but I didn't know it then. And those 5 years, those years of guilt and grief and loneliness, they're part of me, Caleb. They shaped who I am. She grabbed his good hand. We're all broken. Every single one of us. The question is whether we're going to stay broken alone, or whether we're going to be broken together. He stared at her. Something shifted in his eyes, fear, hope, longing. Together, he repeated. Together. She stepped closer. Stay with me, Caleb. Help me rebuild the ranch. Help me build a life. I'm not asking you to forget your sister or pretend the past didn't happen. I'm just asking you to let there be a future too. He was quiet for so long, she thought she'd lost him. Thought he'd pull away, mount his horse ride off into the sunset, like the hero in some dime novel. Then he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't soft. It was fierce and desperate, like a drowning man grabbing for air. She kissed him back just as hard, her fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. Is that a yes? She whispered. That's a yes. He pressed his forehead against hers. God help me, Ellie Prescott. I think I've been falling for you since the moment you pointed that rifle at my chest. She laughed, a real laugh, the first one in longer than she could remember. Then you're even more foolish than I thought. Probably. He kissed her again, softer this time. But I'm your fool now. If you'll have me, I'll have you. She pulled back and met his eyes. For as long as you'll stay. How about forever? Forever works. They returned to Copper Ridge 3 days later. The ranch was a ruin. The barn had burned to the ground. The house was a shell, its roof collapsed, its walls blackened by fire. The corral fences were ash and splinters. Ellie stood in what used to be her kitchen and felt nothing but determination. We'll rebuild, she said. Caleb came to stand beside her, surveying the damage. It'll take months, maybe years. I've got time. She looked at him. We've got time. Diego arrived that afternoon with a wagon full of supplies. He'd spent the weeks of the trial gathering materials, calling in favors, recruiting help. I owe you this, Senora, he said when she tried to thank him. I owe you much more, but this is a start. Over the following weeks, the ranch began to rise from the ashes. Men came from town to help some who had been too afraid to stand against Thornton, now eager to make amends. They raised new walls, laid new floors, hammered new shingles onto a new roof. Rosa sent money from Mexico, more than Ellie had expected, more than she could accept. She sent it back. Rosa sent it again with a note. "For the woman who gave me back my courage, please." Ellie kept it. By midsummer, the house was standing again. Not the same as before, nothing would ever be the same, but solid, strong, ready to face whatever came next. On the day they finished the last of the repairs, Ellie walked out to the new corral and leaned against the fence. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. A warm breeze carried the scent of sage and dust. Caleb joined her 2 glasses of whiskey in his hands. He handed her one. "To new beginnings," he said. "To new beginnings." They drank. The whiskey burned going down, but it was a good burn, a clean burn. "I've been thinking," Caleb said after a moment. "Dangerous habit." He smiled. "I've been thinking about what comes next, after the ranch is finished, after we're settled." "What about it?" "I want to keep hunting." Ellie's heart sank. She'd known somewhere deep down that this was coming, that a man like Caleb couldn't just stop being who he was. "I understand," she said quietly. "No, wait." He grabbed her arm. "Not like before. Not chasing ghosts across the territory. I mean, I want to help people. People like you. People who've been hurt by men like Thornton and Dillard. People who need someone to fight for them." She blinked. "You want to be a lawman?" "Something like that. The federal marshal offered me a position." "Deputy. Strictly local," he said. "No more long rides. No more disappearing for months at a time." He searched her face. "I'd be home every night. I'd be here with you. But I'd also be doing something that matters. Something that makes the world a little less cruel." Ellie was quiet, thinking it over. It wasn't what she'd imagined. It wasn't the peaceful, quiet life she'd dreamed of. But then again, she'd never been the peaceful, quiet type. "One condition," she said. "Name it." "You teach me to shoot like you do. None of this, 'ma'am, you should stay safe' nonsense. If you're going to be fighting bad men, I want to be able to fight beside you." He laughed a real laugh, full and warm. "You drive a hard bargain, Eleanor Prescott. You have no idea." She set down her whiskey glass and turned to face him fully. "So, do we have a deal?" He extended his hand. She took it. "Deal." They shook on it like business partners. Then he pulled her close and kissed her under the setting sun, and for a moment, just a moment, everything was perfect. 2 months later, they were married. It was a small ceremony held in the new barn they'd built together. Rosa came up from Mexico. Diego stood as witness. Sheriff Greeley was there too, still carrying his guilt, like a stone still trying to make amends. Ellie wore her mother's dress, ivory lace, yellowed with age, but still beautiful. Caleb wore a new suit that Diego had insisted on buying him. Neither of them looked entirely comfortable. It didn't matter. What mattered was the way Caleb's eyes lit up when he saw her walking toward him. What mattered was the tremble in his voice when he said his vows. What mattered was the feeling of his hand in hers, steady, warm, real. "I, Caleb James Ashford, take you, Eleanor Jane Prescott, to be my wife. To have and to hold. To protect and to cherish. Through storms and sunshine. Through grief and joy. For as long as I draw breath." She squeezed his hand. "I, Eleanor Jane Prescott, take you, Caleb James Ashford, to be my husband. To stand beside and never behind. To fight with and for. Through fire and flood. Through darkness and light. For as long as my heart beats." The preacher pronounced them married. Caleb kissed her like she was the last good thing in the world. Maybe for him, she was. That night, after the guests had gone, and the lanterns had been dimmed, they sat together on the new porch of the new house, looking out at the land that had nearly destroyed them both. "Do you think Henry would approve?" Caleb asked quietly. It was a question Ellie had asked herself 100 times. 1,000. "I think Henry would want me to be happy," she said finally. "And I think he would have liked you. You're both stubborn, reckless, too brave for your own good." "So, yes," she smiled. "Yes, I think he'd approve." Caleb put his arm around her. She leaned into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her shoulder. "I never thought I'd get this," he said. "A home, a family, someone to come back to. After Sarah died, I figured that part of my life was over. Figured all I had left was the hunt. And now, he kissed the top of her head. Now I have something worth more than revenge, something worth living for. Is that your way of saying you love me? Ellie, I've been in love with you since you shot Dutch Harrigan in the leg and dragged me across the desert. I just didn't have the words for it then. You have them now. I love you," he said simply. "More than I've ever loved anything. More than I thought I was still capable of loving." Her throat tightened. "I love you too, and I'm going to keep loving you until we're both too old and stubborn to remember why we started." He laughed softly. "I can live with that." "Good, because you don't have a choice." They sat there until the stars came out, two broken people who'd found each other in the wreckage of their lives. Two survivors who'd learned that the only thing stronger than grief was hope. A year later, Ellie gave birth to a daughter. They named her Sarah Rose. Sarah for Caleb's sister, Rose for Rosa, who had made everything possible. Ellie held the tiny bundle in her arms and wept. Not from sadness this time, from something so big and bright it didn't have a name. "She's beautiful," Caleb whispered, tears streaming down his own face. "She's perfect. She's ours. She's ours." He wrapped his arms around them both, this new family born from ashes and blood and impossible love. Outside, the summer sun beat down on Copper Ridge Ranch. The new barn stood tall. The new fences stretched strong and straight. The horses grazed in the new corral, healthy and content. It wasn't the same ranch Ellie had fought so hard to save. It was better. It was alive. Years later, when people asked her how she'd survived, how she'd lost everything, and still found a way to build something beautiful, she always gave the same answer. "I stopped waiting for life to get easier. I stopped believing I was too old, too broken, too damaged to start again. I grabbed onto the first hand that reached out to me, and I held on tight. And then I did the hardest thing of all. What was that? I let myself hope." She'd look out at the ranch, then at the man who'd ridden into her life when she least expected it, at the daughter who'd given her a reason to face each new day, at the land that had tried to break her and only made her stronger. And she'd smile, because Eleanor Prescott had learned something in those dark years of grief and fire and blood. Something that couldn't be burned or stolen or destroyed. She'd learned that love doesn't have an age limit, that hope doesn't have an expiration date, that the heart once broken can heal stronger than before. She'd learned that it's never too late to start over, and she'd learned that sometimes the storms that nearly kill you are the same ones that bring you home. The wind whispered across Copper Ridge Ranch, carrying the scent of sage and summer rain. In the distance, thunder rumbled. Not a threat anymore, just a promise. Eleanor Prescott stood on her porch, watching the horizon, her husband beside her daughter in her arms. She wasn't too old for this. She never had been.